Closing a credit card can hurt your credit scores, but that doesn't mean you should hold on to a credit card forever. Now, many financial experts will caution against closing credit cards for that reason. Closing cards can have temporarily negative effects on your credit scores. For example, closing a card can also decrease the amount of available credit you have to you, which can hurt your credit scores. You also have to factor in your age of credit. If you're closing a credit card that's old, well then that can reduce your average age of credit, again negatively impacting your scores. However, there are plenty of good reasons why you should cancel a credit card. Let me tell you why. Number one is limiting your exposure to fraud. Having a bunch of physical credit cards out there, one in the glove compartment of your car, one in your house, one in maybe your office drawer, just means that you have many more cards floating around, which means more risk of them getting stolen and fraudulently used. Then there's also not just the physical aspects of cards, but there's also the digital aspect. Someone might take advantage of your account password and hack into it. Having fewer cards just means less passwords to hack into. Now, speaking of passwords, I also want to talk about another reason to consider canceling a card, and that's just simply having to manage multiple cards. Every new card you add is a new password to remember. It's another bill that you're going to have to pay off. It's another login that you have to deal with. So closing cards that aren't working for you reduces that headache. Another reason to consider canceling a credit card is if it charges an annual fee. Now, NerdWallet does recommend plenty of credit cards that do have annual fees, but it's because they have tons of benefits to match or even outweigh the cost of the annual fee. These tend to be things like travel credit cards that have lavish travel perks, but if you're not traveling this year, then it might not make sense to pay the annual fee for that card. You might also have a credit card that has bonus rewards. I'm talking about bonus points for something like dining. If you've sworn off going to restaurants this year, then it might make sense to not pay an annual fee for a dining credit card that has bonus dining rewards, and just accepting a lower rewards rate on a no annual fee credit card. Number 4 is something I mentioned earlier, is that average age of credit. Of course, closing a really old credit card, I'm talking about that first credit card that you got in college, might not be such a wise move, but if you're canceling a card that's newer anyway, then it might not affect you as much. And finally, the best reason to cancel a credit card is if you can't control your spending on it. If that card is not working for you, if it's a temptation to spend beyond your means, then this is a case where it might just be better to have a debit card or pay with cash, so that way you avoid any credit card debt. If you're on board with canceling your card, well, let's talk about the steps to actually make it happen. Number 1, check any rewards that you might have on your account. Typically, closing a card means that you also close any rewards associated with it. So let's say you have outstanding cashback rewards, make sure you actually claim them, which might be transferring them to an account, applying them to your statement balance, or just asking for a cash check. If you have other rewards, I'm talking about things like hotel night certificates, you might want to use those first before you close the card. Then you're going to have to pay off your account balance. Finally, it's time to actually close the card, which means contacting your bank. One of the best ways to do this is simply calling them, and there's probably a phone number on the back of your card telling you which number to call. When you call them, there's a few things you can do. If you're downgrading a card because you just don't like the idea of paying an annual fee, that might be possible. Ask the bank if they either have a retention offer, which means that sometimes they'll give you a reduced or a waived annual fee, or they might give you something like bonus points if you keep the card for another year. Depending on the value of that retention offer, that might be something appealing to you. Sometimes you can also just ask to transfer the fee card to a similar fee-free version. This can be helpful because if the bank is willing to let you do this, you can typically maintain that account history and not lose that average age of credit having that longer card. You simply take the card with the fee and the benefits and change it to a card with, well, no benefits, but also no fee. Now, closing a card can certainly have a temporarily negative effect on your credit scores, but just realize that if a credit card isn't working for you, then closing it can be better off in the long run.